Welcome to How'd You Do That? Today we have a special guest by the name of Mark Turrell. Mark Turrell is the author of Scaling. He's a professor at Hult International Business School and an entrepreneur. He has done plenty of Tedx talks. He's the CEO of Orcasci, and he was a young global leader for the World Economic Forum. Welcome, Mark. Thank you
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell my audience more about what you do? I know I gave a brief introduction of yourself.
I just do stuff. It's quite interesting to look at, let's say, a career that has been recently varied, because you can sort of distill it down into one word. So I think stuff is a decent word. But then there's a number of different things that I've done over the time. And now I'm also doing a number of different things now. So my background is a technology entrepreneur, but never very technical. I was always more interested on the business side and the human side, the psychology side, and the sort of joy of numbers. Money was one of the numbers, but I just like numbers. I took my first software company public after I'd done my PhD, which I didn't quite finish. I published already a book that was my PhD thesis. I did consulting, I lecture, I was a spy for a year. I did all kinds of stuff. Hence, stuff is a decent way of describing it.
It does sound like a perfect representation, stuff, because never thought that you were a spy.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, of course you shouldn't know.
Because
2011, very interesting year, very strange stuff.
I think that probably is a little bit private, so I won't go too much into detail there.
I did mention it in 2 TED Talks, so I outed myself. It's a lot safer. If you have secrets, you're at risk, so I just told everybody.
Oh, wonderful. So you're safe now.
Yes, I'm safe now.
So you wrote a book on scaling. So what is scaling, and can you tell us a little bit more details about it?
Yeah, so with scaling, and with the subtitle is Small Smart Moves. So I've been looking at how do you get a very big result, whether it's a company, a social movement, with, let's say, minimal effort or the least amount of work possible. And what I found is that, so this is not looking at linear growth. This is looking at particular times when all of a sudden things go whoosh. So how does the whoosh happen? What I found was that either deliberately or sometimes by accident, it's possible for individuals and organizations to very smartly come up with a plan, which has got various different aspects to it, that allows them to scale much more robustly, more quickly, and with more, let's say, certainty than just winging it or just hoping that something works.
Okay, wonderful. We had a discussion prior to this interview, and you had talked a lot about the education space. So why is your focus more on the education space right now?
So, I mean, by way of context, I have a 25-year plan to change the world. We might get into that. But as a piece of that plan, my goal is hundreds of millions of people. So we have a small amount of time on the planet. Why are we wasting our time with trivial crap?
Right.
Well, I don't really waste my time with trivial crap unless there's some good reasons. But then looking at one of the things that struck me a couple of years ago was the progression of technology and artificial intelligence, robots, and it really showed that we humans needed to keep up. Right. We really needed to keep up.
Okay.
The surprising thing, though, is that when I looked at all of the skills that were needed, critical thinking comes out top, complex problem solving, creativity, leadership, empathy. I was struck by the fact that I was never taught a single one of those skills explicitly in school or in several universities.
Okay.
So this was shocking to me. I mean, clearly if something is important, we teach it.
Right.
So I just imagine, let's say that we want to learn math. We've decided not to tell them that math exists. We'll teach them French, and we hope that they learn math by accident. This is ridiculous. So this is how we currently teach 21st century skills. So I waited a little bit to see if anybody else was going to do it, and it didn't look as though they had. And so I began to become very interested in is it possible to even teach these skills explicitly? And I did a lot of tests and experiments. Once I worked that out, I realized that this education space could be very, very large.
Mhm.
It's one of those foundations. I needed to design it as a moonshot, like sort of something big. So my target's 100 million learners in the next 5 years.
Wow.
Very doable.
Mhm.
Because if we look at, let's say, the onset of robots and AI, if we're not careful, I mean, we're not properly educating people for today's jobs, let alone tomorrow. And clearly it puts those school children at risk now. It puts the university kids that are going through and got some student debt at risk. And it puts us adults already in the workforce at risk. So this is a big, meaningful challenge to go after. And my family comes from an education background somewhat. So this for me was a very natural extension into that area.
Wow, wonderful. So I don't need to ask you that question again about your 25-year plan. But how, other
Haven't
than
told you what
that,
it is.
so what year are you right now at your 25-year plan?
So right now, and given that we're doing this in January 2020, the birthday of the plan is Davos. So right now it'll be the 12th year, so that means I have 13 years left.
Wonderful, wonderful. And how big is this impact? I know you mentioned about a whole big number, but after the 25-year plan, what is that big number that you're looking at?
Well, so maybe if I step back, so in 2000, just before 2008, so 2007, I was nominated a tech pioneer by the World Economic Forum.
Okay.
And that meant that I was going to fulfill a lifetime's ambition to go to Davos. So as I thought about that, I was a little bit bored of myself because I've been doing the same thing successfully. I've been doing the same thing for 14 years, successfully every 3 years, but the same thing again and again. So I was a bit bored.
Okay.
So I decided that I would reset my life to say that I exist to change the whole world for better, all of it at the same time, ideally without anybody knowing that it's me. And just to make sure that I wasn't crazy, I decided to set aside, you can hear an opinion, I decided that I needed to do some projects directly or indirectly to help 40 million people's lives in the first 4 years. No pressure.
Wow.
Well, when I went to Davos, I met a guy from Zimbabwe, Arthur, and we sat down and he said that he was from Zimbabwe. He was the leader of the opposition party. And they were going to fight an election against Robert Mugabe. And the MDC, the opposition, were going to win, but it was also guaranteed to be stolen because it's a corrupt democracy. So I said, of course I'll help you. But my first question is obviously, how many people live in your country?
Right.
30 million. Fantastic. I can do almost 30% of my target with a single project. Well, now we have to find out if I'm full of crap. Well, fortunately not. So I invented sourced electric. I used a lot of the things in the scaling book are actually in this thing. And what we did is we had 1,000 people with camera phones take pictures of their election results.
Okay.
So that before anybody knew it, we had 1,000 people outside the biggest polling stations. They weren't taking pictures of votes. They were taking a picture of the final tally that was posted on the front door of the polling station.
Right, right.
Sure enough, that meant that after a few hours of this type of picture taking transcription, meant that we'd counted over 36% of all votes in Zimbabwe with immediate physical evidence, so it couldn't be cheated afterwards. And a group of anonymous activists put out a press release to say, hey, we've crowdsourced the election. The opposition is winning by 66%, and there's no way that Mugabe could win. And he went on to lose. So it's good. So he lost by 50.4%. And the only reason why he lost was this plan. So that was my first project, and that took 45 minutes to invent. Wow. And it took about 10 hours to execute.
Wow.
So that's not bad as my first plan. Now, I'm not being quite specific as to what happens in 25 years, so I've still got some space. A lot of things can happen. Right. But right now, I'm looking for these projects that have got scale of millions rather than, of course, there's a philosophy that you can change the world one person at a time. That's for other people.
Okay.
I like scale, big things.
Okay, perfect. So on that note, earlier you were talking about the TEDx talks. You've delivered, is it 4 TEDx talks?
4 so far, yeah.
Okay, and then and you opened up successful businesses, and you're on a mission to help the world. What don't you do?
Spy for a year, author, relationship meetup. That was quite good. And when you start to educate things at 21st century skills as work-life skills, so that you end up, how do you take, let's say, coaching advice that people might have to into a training course, because then you don't have to coach because coaching's boring. You have to listen to people with problems. How boring is that? So training programs, just rainmaking machines, another one.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Because but I have very much a business sense.
Okay.
So my stepfather had his own business. My mother had her own business. So I'm very used to having, let's say, having your own businesses in my blood. I can't work for anybody.
Right.
Not a chance. I can have customers, but I can't work for an employer. No. So then you work out what do customers want, what are they willing to pay money for. You take some sort of sensible risks or sometimes some not so sensible risks.
Mm-hmm.
And some things work and some things don't. But it's not as though everything works.
Right. No, that's actually good. And so I know you mentioned right now that you know, your parents were in you know, they were entrepreneurs. That's where you became so entrepreneurial yourself. But where did you get that drive? What has led you to you know, a wonderful growth? I mean, you're international. You're everywhere right now.
Well, I mean, it's very easy to be international. Just book plane tickets. So go and study in a different country. So it's not particularly hard to be international.
Right.
Having said that, that just puts me into a bucket of maybe 10% of the world's population. And it's not as though everything is successful. I mean, I took my first company public, but then some people took it over afterwards, and I went from this to NIS.
Oh, okay.
So it's if you look at where does the drive come from. So I have no drive for money. Don't care. Not because I have money. I mean, at times I've had lots of money. Most of my time I've had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like numbers. I like the challenge of doing things.
Okay.
So things that look like they're hard or interesting for me. Otherwise it's boring. Even now I keep getting people asking me to help them with various businesses. And quite often I lose interest in the first 10 minutes. I mean, I might be able to help you, but why would I help you sell more socks? When you're selling, how's that going to change the world? But they're great socks. Oh, I don't care. They're great. So it's doing things that are good, doing honest things, ideally doing big things that can make a difference at scale.
Right.
I also, as part of my plan to change the world, realize that I exist to help others.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but so trying to work out, and that's why I wrote the book, is that rather than, let's say, sort of encapsulating knowledge into a conversation, write a book and you can read it yourself.
Right. Right.
So yeah, just different. So I'm not, as I said, I don't care about money. I don't care about physical things. I like doing things that are really hard. That's interesting.
Right. And so then what is Orcasci, the company where you're the CEO?
Well, and so Orcasci is I consider, if I look at companies, I would consider things to have real companies and lifestyle companies. So a lifestyle company is one where it's only you, and you hop around the world, do some work, do some talks, and things like that. So that for me is not a real company. Okay. It's a lifestyle business. A real company is when you employ 40 people, you only have enough money to pay 25 of them. Therefore, you have to go into debt and personally guarantee it whilst you're not being paid to make sure that they're paid, because you have a 3-week shortfall of an invoice coming in. That's a real company. So, but what I am doing with Orcasci now, so my new education business will be called Transfer Marketing.
Okay.
Because I don't care about teaching people, I like to transform people. And so that will just be a part of Orcasci.
Okay.
That's the next thing. I've got to I have to invoice somewhere.
Good point. So where did you get all this passion from? I mean, you are, you're a professor, you want to change the world. You've got this whole big plan. You've opened up big companies. Where's this passion coming from? I mean, or what is your passion that drives you?
Well, so one of the things is that I really don't care what other people think.
Okay.
Now I care and I have logic, but right now I'd rather do what I think is right. Okay. And if you say it's wrong, I don't care. Right. So it's also, I never do small talk.
Okay.
So I don't care about your favorite food. If you ask me what the weather is like in Berlin, Google it. Oh, why are you asking me? Do I look like a weatherman? So, but if you don't do small talk, particularly if you live in a place like the States, which I did for a while, you got nobody to speak to. Um, so then I'd rather do my own thing. And I do spend time because I'm very curious about how things work to understand. And then once I've understood it, because I like the scaling approach, how do I, if it's good and it's interesting, how do you package it, formulate it, and then how do you ship it out at scale?
Okay.
So that's I do things that I just make me curious. Oh, that's interesting. How does that work? I don't know.
So would you
And
say that,
sorry,
sorry?
then after you.
I was going to say, so then is your passion something similar to what motivates you? I mean, I know it's helping others, and you've been very successful in your career, but is that the fact that now that you want to give back to the community?
No, so I get no passion from helping others. Well, it just is. I exist to help. The only way I can change the world at scale is to help others. So just a pure logic thing. So it's not as though I'm like, hey, I feel really, I don't give a damn. So it's not that. It's the, let's say, if there's any passion, it's like being curious about stuff and doing big things. Like doing the impossible is interesting. Now, it doesn't always work. That's okay. As long as you deliberately learn from it, you can get better next time. But yeah, so the passion is, let's say, acting on curiosity. Now, by the way, that does mean then is that I need to be stimulated. So that means that I need people with problems, and the problem should not be how do I sell more socks problems, but how do we change the world of teaching problems? Then it's good. Then I'm brain excited.
Right.
Otherwise, just don't care.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that you've had companies that have failed or that didn't do well. Like, so what did you learn from those from that part of your life?
Well, already you can tell that so unfortunately with these companies, they're all different. So you can't just replicate some knowledge from one thing and take it to the other. Now,
True.
there are pieces that you can. So particularly as you have more business experience, you can see things happening before they happen, and let's say plan better for success or failure. So those are some of the things. And one of the things that I have been learning is that, I mean, one of the hard things about business to get across, particularly for the people just starting, is that a business is about money. Now, that's hard to say. It's very controversial to say, because clearly it's about follow your passion, blah, blah, blah. But let's imagine that you follow your passion, you borrow $50,000, which you don't have because you borrowed it. You've got 20,000 that you've promised other people. You have no customers, there's no revenue. Well, then you're going to get bust and you owe them money.
Right.
Business about numbers. And I think a lot of the people that there's this sort of success pornography that sort of populates the world of entrepreneurship, that like follow your passion, all this garbage. One of the things that I have noticed is that you need to work out how much will you spend, how much money will you get, how long will it take for the money to come in, and you need one number to be bigger than the other number.
Right.
And a lot of people don't get that. So, and I think the other one as well is that there are many businesses where investors put money in. Well, investors are typically not nice people. So if it's good, they want a bigger piece. If it's not good, they want to kick you out and they put somebody else in. And even if they follow your vision, maybe you now have 3 rounds of investors and different investors come in. Well, their vision isn't your vision. So right now, then it's things about numbers, and then you look at if you have investors, how do they operate? But then you also need to be very close to your customers. Sometimes your customers just change their mind and don't want to buy your thing anymore.
That's right.
So practical stuff. That's pretty much where you need to start. Now, I could add on getting great people, but if we talk about getting great people, the reality is that you need to try to avoid crap people.
Right.
Because that's the normal thing. Your company is successful because you have a slightly bigger balance of good people to crap people.
That's true.
It's the hidden secret of talking about talent. Most people talk about great talent, but the reality is that leaders spend 80% of their time with crap people. or clearing
Right.
up the mess after crap people.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So watch out. You've been warned.
So what's next now for you, Mark?
So so there's two businesses that I have,
Hmm.
and a thing. So the first is this education business.
Hmm.
So the logic of that business is to develop curriculum around these different 21st century skills,
Okay.
to work out how they can be taught to different groups, such as children or adults or corporates,
Okay.
um, then to license those courses. So it's a
Mhm.
licensing business, just like Netflix licenses content,
Right.
and then teaching teachers, and then working out how to deliver that online as well.
Wow.
So that's that
Wonderful.
business that I'm developing, and that's working with countries, regions, school systems, to get that, because people right now are it's just, for me, it's weird. Everybody, I mean, if the most important thing is critical thinking, teach it.
Right.
Fantastic opportunity. So the next thing then is I have a business that is business to government.
Hmm.
So as I go around my travels, I see incredible technology companies and service providers who are terrible at sales and marketing. It's awful.
Right.
I see governments and regions with challenges, opportunities, but they
Hmm.
don't know who to speak to. And then
Wow.
I see financiers who'd like to invest in great projects, but they don't necessarily see the right thing.
Hmm.
So there's almost it's relevant to this, like the perfect Davos business is you just sit in the middle and you broker deals.
Hmm.
A distribution business.
Okay.
So, and that focused at the moment on water technology, health technology, and education as well. So
Oh,
that's another
wonderful.
thing.
Hmm.
And then my
And
third thing is creating a network for big, bold, and brave. That's the next thing that's going to come up.
and what is that? Would you like to share a little bit of information about that?
Well, so I became a young global leader at the World Economic Forum back in 2010.
Hmm.
And back then, the motto of the thing included big, bold, and brave. Well, I'm been an alumni. I mean, like, you were a young global leader for 6 years, and then I stopped being an alumni a couple of years ago. Well, just before that, they changed the motto. So for me, I got very angry when we were told that, okay, the young global leaders were meant to be respectful, generous, and kind.
Mm.
Well, I won't say anything nasty about that. Well, the thing is that, I mean, clearly people should be respectful, generous, and kind.
Right.
But I mean, that counts for what? 4 billion people.
Yeah.
So how do you distinguish, let's say, the ability to create a Facebook or a Google or a Wikipedia from everybody that is respectful, generous, and kind? So what I'd like beforehand is that this explicit focus on picking the exceptional people who had done things differently. They were
Hmm.
bold, they were brave, and celebrating that. I found that that particular community that I was in was becoming way too institutionalized, was becoming
Okay.
boring,
Hmm.
and it wasn't what I was used to.
Okay.
What I also didn't like about it is that it's age-based.
Hmm.
So, because there are many people with phenomenal achievements who are 80, there are people who, let's say, haven't done the achievements yet, but they're 23, who are on the potential to do something. Well, why can't they be a member of things? So I've been playing around with this new network, and that's something that I'm hoping to get launched. Another thing.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And so, have you always been in the educational space from the get-go, or?
Well, I've always done some education stuff. So my mother had kindergartens.
Okay.
So she bought a kindergarten, and then she ended up with 3 kindergartens. And I remember helping her do business planning when I was a teenager, because I could use a
Okay.
computer and a spreadsheet. I was teaching when I was doing my my PhD,
Okay.
so doing teaching stuff there. When Hult was created, I did some teaching there.
Hmm.
In my software business, I helped create the teaching business there, because
Hmm.
that's always been an essential piece.
Yeah.
Now it's just a lot more serious. But then you've got to work out, let's say, what is the piece that you want? So I don't
Hmm.
want to have a school.
Hmm.
The world is my playground. It'll be really
Wow.
boring to have to go to the same school every day.
That's true.
Other people could do that. That's okay.
Right. That's wonderful. So we've learned a lot about you and what your plans are for the future and what you're currently doing. You're on a mission to help the world. any advice, any last words that you can help our listeners or anybody who's watching on YouTube and our podcast, what advice can you give others, if any?
So there's a few things. So it's quite hard. Going down this journey is quite hard.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad idea to test to see if you could do it. Because there's no point thinking that you're an entrepreneur, borrowing the money and then finding out you're not, which is an expensive waste of time. So if you're going to go down a path of doing things differently, think it through.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing is that the majority of people do not know themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They either don't know themselves well or they don't know themselves at all. So it's quite handy to do a few little exercises to learn to begin to know yourself. A small one is, let's say there's an exercise that I'll be teaching to a bunch of kids, which is how to slow down your brain so that you can realize like the spontaneous, because it turns out most people do action spontaneously.
Right.
Well, if you learn to slow down your brain, you can almost replay that instantaneous moment in your head. And you can realize that maybe you actually did 10 different things grouped into 3 areas. Well, then maybe you don't like the way that you behave. Maybe when somebody tells a joke, you go, that's not a joke. And now people are annoyed at you because you just, you're no fun. So now you need to work out, well, why do I do that? Then if you slow down your brain, you can give yourself tests. Maybe if I don't say this, I think it'll be better. So there's a lot of self-understanding that is quite handy. But I'd also say that self-understanding is really hard in today's day and age. I think one of the things, if you're watching this thing, is that if you're watching this thing, YouTube will play another one immediately afterwards, and another one, and another one. If you're looking at a silly Instagram story or a Facebook thing, there's another one, there's another one. Well, right now, technology companies, pretty much since 2011, have been developing crack. So there's this technology crack, content crack. But if you look back, it's all pointless. You don't remember any of it anyway.
Right.
It's a nice way to kind of not think. But if you like, that's the goal, have you to not think. And ideally, when you do think, you think of some stupid brand and some special offer that you saw interspersed between the silly videos you're watching.
Right.
So you need to work out, I mean, if you are to do something different in the world, you need to work out, do you want to be on the same treadmill as everybody else? It's hard to get off the treadmill. It's hard to stay off the treadmill. And even if you're off the treadmill, often people seem to be much happier on the treadmill.
Right.
However, what happens then is you become a different person. But I know, like we talked about being international at the beginning, and you've also done international stuff as well.
Yes.
Well, it's hard to go home when all of your friends of whatever got married at 24.
Yeah.
And you're now in London and your next stop is Boston and you're stopped. So now, fortunately, it means you can find people that are kind of similar to you, that have the same, they won't have the same goals, but they will at least have the same kind of mindset. And so that's something, again, to look for is, let's say, who are the people with the right mindset that you can hang out with, learn from, and grow from, and not just keep looking at soil.
Right. No, that's wonderful. That's great. Thank you so much, Mark. It's so much to take in, but a great information. It's wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate you coming on our show today and imparting some of your information for others to learn from. And hopefully we can do this again, maybe in about 6 months to see where you're at.
I would love to. Very happy to do that. I always say yes.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thanks again. You have a good one, and we will talk soon.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you.